Welcome to Rewild by Design, a podcast for women in midlife who are ready to burn the rule book, drop the good girl mask, and come home to who they really are. I'm your host, Marissa, a human design and Gene Keys mentor, and your guide in this wild woman era. Get ready for bold conversations, raw truths, and the kind of insights that'll shake you awake. Because midlife isn't the end of your story. It's the point where you finally get to write it your way. Welcome back to the show. And as I said in previous episodes, I want to get back to basics. I don't lecture. So, how can we apply these things to our lives? And I want to talk about human design profiles. I get a lot of questions on this too, the two numbers that are part of your chart. And I see human design profiles as this another layer of flavor that adds to who you are, how you move through your life, your relationships, your work, visibility. This is maybe like a quick little primer on the profiles. Now, like anything that I teach about human design, the profile itself isn't about who you're supposed to become. This is already who you are. This is the energy that you carry in this lifetime. So the profile lines come from the Chinese I Ching. That's the part of human design for the 6 lines of the Chinese hexagram. And each line itself, which we'll dive into in this episode, so feel free if you want to move ahead and go forward to each of your profiles, that is fine. But I think it is pretty important to, if you have, obviously, we're not all living in a vacuum. So you may have some other people in your life who have a completely different profile. So it may be helpful to listen to theirs as well. But when we're talking about profile, some of the things that go on, and when I was contemplating coming up with an idea for this particular podcast, I wanted to say, like, how can we apply this to not only let's learn more about ourselves, but answering questions like, why do I need more time before I move forward on things? Or why do I oscillate between wanting to be left completely alone and needing connection? Or why does someone else have no problem being 100% visible out there, putting themselves out there, but I feel really uncomfortable being in the spotlight? And then these questions about how can we understand ourselves through the best ways, through experience, observation, or trial and error. And your profile is this other layer of flavor that can answer some of these questions. Before we get into that, if this podcast has been supporting you, do me a favor, rate the show, leave a review, leave a comment, share it, like it if you're listening to YouTube. This just helps this message reach more and more women who are looking to come back to themselves. So let's get into it. Your human design profile is made up of 2 numbers, and they look like a fraction. So if you pull your chart, you can get your chart for free at my website, rewildbydesign.com. You can grab your chart, come back to this episode, see what your profile is, and we'll talk about it. Those numbers come from your conscious sun and earth gates and your conscious and your unconscious sun and earth gates. So the conscious side is how you see yourself, whereas your unconscious side, which again is about 88 days before you were born, is how others experience you. So the unconscious side, obviously, is something that you may not experience a lot about yourself, right? But your profile explains how you learn, how you interact with other people, and how life tends to show up for you, and what feels natural versus what feels forced, and why certain things in your life might feel easier or more challenging. And that leads us to the profile, right? And it's not a personality test. This is something I preach over and over. I feel like a broken record. Nothing about human design is meant to define you as the be all end all. This isn't a label. These are patterns of lived experiences. And most women that I work with have spent decades fighting their profile without even realizing it. And there are a lot of people out there who are already naturally living our profile. Because, like everything, if you listen to the previous episode about the gene keys, we talk about high and low expressions, and this goes the same for our profiles. Now, in the Nine Centers Mystery School, which is my 6-month space for women who are looking to really dive into how to apply their design, this is one of the pieces that we slow it down because we're not trying to just memorize our chart, memorize our profile line. We're looking at how can I apply this and harness this energy to my life. You can find your profile on your human design chart right under your type. So mine is projector, my authority is splenic, my profile will say 2-4. These are two numbers separated by a slash. They look like a fraction. Now, let's talk about the 6 lines themselves. As I mentioned, they come from the hexagrams of the Chinese I Ching. Each of these lines represents a way of learning and growing through life. So every profile blends 2 lines. While you're listening to each of these lines, be sure to listen for your conscious and unconscious side. We have high expression, low expression, and real life examples that we're going to go through here so you can actually apply what you're learning. We start at the lowest level of the hexagram. And when I talk about lowest level, it doesn't mean like least experienced. It just means this is line ones are the foundation. If we're use the analogy and the visual of building a house, line ones are the foundation. High expression of a line 1 called the investigator, they're here to build those solid foundations from information. Line 1s need information, depth, and understanding before they feel safe to move on and do things. And line 1s are naturally curious, they're thorough, they're grounded, they're the ones who build trust. They show the rest of us what it looks like to really synthesize information. Now, the low expression of line 1s can feel like they over research, they over analyze, they hold themselves back from moving forward because they feel this innate sense of this lack of having information. And they feel unsafe without certainty, and they tend to doubt themselves. Real life examples that I've seen in line 1s is when you read everything, like you go down the Google rabbit hole before starting a project, or wanting to know enough before speaking on a platform, or maybe feeling anxious when you're thrown into things unprepared. Line 1s are very precise, and that is the gift, and that's the superpower, is in that precision, in that depth of information. They're like wells. Now we have line 2s, also known as the hermit. Line 2s are these natural talents. They're naturally gifted at things because things come easily to them without effort. That being said, line 2s need a lot of alone time and to recharge, to slough off the energy of everybody else. They need space and freedom to go back into their hermit holes and cultivate their gifts. Now, when feeling pressured, line 2s can really hide their gifts. They want to stay in their little hermit cave and not come out. Or they feel overwhelmed by expectations, or when they're asked, how do you know that? Can you prove it? And when they just naturally know something. Or resist being seen when their community are the ones who call them out. Line 2s often are told, hey, you're so good at this, and that feels very exposed. And line 2s, again, need a lot of solitude to recharge. And they naturally want to be invited, but they don't want to be pushed. Now we have the line 3s. These are the experimenters. Line 3s learn by doing. They're experiential learners. These are resilient AF people. They're adaptable and wise because they've gathered so much data in their lives. They're here to try, to fail at something, quote unquote. I don't like the word fail, but they're here to really try it. It doesn't work, then they try something else, they learn, they adjust, body that resiliency. But the low expression of line threes is they can feel shamed for making these mistakes and feeling like something is innately wrong with them because they can't get it on the first go, or they really shut down and avoid taking risks. And when I see line threes out in the wild, these are people who have trial and error careers. Maybe they've had multiple iterations of career paths. Their relationships also teach them lots of valuable lessons, even though when you're in the thick of the shitstorm of a relationship, it doesn't feel so great. But looking back on it, you can see the lessons that relationship was trying to show you. They learn what works by discovering what doesn't. Line threes from the outside can look messy, but what it really is this embodied learning and leadership. Then we move on to line fours. Line fours in traditional human design, they're called the opportunist, but this is because they really naturally have opportunities come to them through their community and their connection. Their opportunities come through people, not through forcing things or pushing. Line fours are naturally relational. There we go. Warm, they're community driven, and referrals tend to just fall into their lap. Line fours are naturally harmonic with line ones. So everything we'll pause here, and if you can visualize, stay with me here. Visualize these lines. So line one is the foundation. Then above that we have line two, and above that is line three. That is the lower trigram of the 6 lines. Then we have line 4. That's the first level of the upper trigram. So very similar to line 1's, they need structure and stability to feel safe, right? When the lower expression of line 4s is they can fear rocking the boat, or they stay stuck in certain relationships or careers that really don't serve them, but they don't feel safe enough to move. And people pleasing is a big tendency in the lower expression of the line 4. Line 4s do better in jobs where they were referred to that career path or that business opportunity. They naturally feel called to support other people. And I will just end the line 4 by just saying, if you are a line 4 or a line 4 in your life, really allow them the space to cultivate those relationships, because that's where their learning comes from. In line 5s, again, we're in the upper trigram here. Line 5s are natural problem solvers, and they have this like encoded leadership energy. But that being said, other people can project things onto them. That's what we call like a projection field when we talk about auras. And if you are in the human design space and you hear that, line 5s, they're always being projected. That basically what that means is their aura carries this energy with them that people like naturally can see that they have solutions. And line 5s are naturally practical, and they lead when they're invited to be. But if they're not in the right spaces or places, people can blame them, or line 5s can feel misunderstood, or they carry these unrealistic expectations or burn out from those projections. Now, sometimes line 5s can be seen as the fixers, this like knight on the white horse coming in to be the savior. But that's not what the line 5, the high expression of the line 5, is actually someone who has the answers, but sits back and waits to be invited by the right people. Last but not least, we have line 6s. Line sixes are at the top of that upper trigram and are very similar to line threes because line sixes actually spend the first third of their life operating more in that line three energy because line sixes have three phases as part of their life. So from 0 to about their first Saturn return, line sixes again operate more in the energy of line threes, a lot of trial and experimentation. Then from the Saturn return to the Uranus opposition. So let's say 30 to 50, we're just estimating here, give or take a year or two, up or down. The line sixes are what we call on the roof. And that just means they're a little bit more detached from that trial and error energy. They can still see it, but what this phase is like goopy, soupy integration phase, and where they are integrating and embodying all of these lessons that they learned because at 50 and beyond, they've stepped into their role model phase. And this is where they're off the roof and they're here to really be these natural teachers and guides that have really lived this experience and can show the rest of us what it's like to really trust in life and trust in your purpose. Line sixes can really feel a lot of this natural pull to find their purpose. And sometimes they can be considered late bloomers, but I really think line sixes are the most wise of all of the lines because they operate on this natural timing in these phases. So now we've got all 6 lines. What happens when you combine them together? You will see that all of the profiles will have a natural push-pull energy between the lines. If these are how the energies work together. Again, how you experience life and how others experience you. The tension or the harmony between those two lines explains so much about why certain roles, certain relationships, or expectations or dynamics either felt really good and juicy and exciting or really heavy and disappointing. We're going to go through each of the profiles. Feel free to pause this and come back to it. But when we look at, we're going to combine lines 1 and 3. This is the investigator experimenter, a 1-3 profile. 1-3s are here to learn deeply and then test it out in real time. 1-3s need a solid foundation of information and lived experience. So it's finding the balance between the two. You may often feel yourself being pulled between wanting certainty and needing to try things out yourself. Burnout can happen when you spend too much time researching forever and never get anything done because your body is trying to move in one way, but then your brain is holding you back, right? But growth really happens when you let yourself learn by doing, even when it's messy. Something that I like to tell 1-3s is trusting in yourself, even jotting this down in a journal. I already know enough. And just let yourself move from there. Then we have the 1-4. This is an investigator opportunist. 1-4s, again, they have that 1 line and the 4 line. So like we talked about before, they need strong foundations. But you build these strong foundations and then share them through your relationships. People often trust you because you are reliable, you're thoughtful, you're insightful, and opportunities come through your network, not through you forcing things. 1-4s can feel torn between staying safe and comfortable and stepping into visibility, that push-pull energy. But life opens up for you when you trust the people in your community and trust that it is safe to be seen. 2-4s, the hermit opportunists. 2-4s have these, again, natural gifts and talents and need alone time to recharge and hone their gifts. Others will naturally see your talent. Your community will naturally see your talent even when you don't. Something might be just so easy and natural for you, but someone else may look at you like you're a savant. But 2 4s are not meant to chase opportunities. Your opportunities come through your connections. So making sure that you're leaning into your community. And you're going to feel this like natural push pull energy like, ooh, I want to be alone. No, 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 I want to be seen. And I need to be with my community. And this tension, the lower expression shows up when you spend too much time isolating yourself. Finding the balance. If that's the one theme running through this whole episode is finding the balance. Just trusting that you need to honor your rest while also answering correct invitations too. Even if you're not a projector, invitations are still out there. Then we move on to the 2 5, the hermit heretic. 2 5s have a double projection field. And that means 2s get projected on because people can see that natural talent. The 5s, like we talked about before, is because people see you as this fixer. But 2s have these intuitive gifts, and again, others project solutions onto you. You need space, but people often expect you to show up with answers. So finding that happy middle between going out there and doing your thing and also not sharing too much unless it's invited. Exhaustion for 2 5s really happens when you're trying to meet everyone else's expectations, but the true power in that profile lies when you are choosing when and where you engage out in the world. Then we have our 3 5s, which in my world, I have quite a few 3 5s in my life. This is a natural profile that carries a lot of resiliency, and 3 5s often roll their eyes when I tell them that because they're like, yeah, girl, I know, I have lived through some shit. But you've lived through some shit and you're still here. So that is the resiliency. Learn through trial and error and turn those lessons into solutions. People look to you when things need fixing. So it's, again, tempering those projections with being embodied in your own self. You're resilient as fuck. You're adaptable. You're practical. But making sure you don't stay in that lower expression of the 3 of feeling shame for making those mistakes. Don't take them personally. This is just gathering feedback. The wisdom comes for you when you stop trying to be perfect and just trust your lived experience. Then we have 3 6s. I think this is one of the less common profiles in a 3 6. This, as we talked about, the 6 has those 3 phases. So early in life, a 3 6 will operate like a double 3. That's a lot of trial and error energy. Early in life is full of these lessons and course corrections, but you're here to grow into that wisdom over time. And from the 3 6s that I've met in the past, midlife often brings this like deep reassessment of what truly matters to you. Like we talked about, the 6 has this deep innate need to find purpose in their life. And the 3 6s often get tired of repeating the same cycles. But when you truly honor your personal timing and integrate all those lessons that you've learned, that's when that natural role model energy just comes out. Then we have the 4 6s. These are opportunist role models. Relationships are crucial to your life path. You are here to lead by example and within your community. So earlier in life for 4 6s focuses on connection, whereas later in life focuses on embodiment. And you can feel that push-pull energy between loyalty and your own personal evolution. And trusting that your deep fulfillment as a 4 6 comes when your relationships support who you are becoming. Then we have 4-1s. 4-1s are pretty unique because they are the only ones that carry this juxtaposition cross. So if you are a 4-1, leave a comment. I want to hear about it because, again, this is not as common a profile. And 4-1s have more of this like fixed destiny. And we'll talk about incarnation crosses in another episode. So the 4-1 or opportunist investigator brings a lot of foundational ideas and structure to community. So you value consistency, trust, and shared values. And change can feel pretty ungrounded and disruptive. So making sure that intentional changes are what you're making. And you thrive as a 4-1 in environments that feel aligned with who you really are, not who you think other people want you to be. And your influence on your community grows when you stand firm in the knowledge that you carry, in trusting that you have enough information to share with other people. Then we have our 5-1s. I have a lot of 5-1s in my life too. So the heretic investigator is here to offer practical solutions backed by the depth of information. People will project this leadership energy onto you. And so you carry this natural pressure to get it right. And burnout happens often for 5-1s because you're trying to live up to these unrealistic expectations that are just projected onto you instead of just trusting that your strength comes from solid foundations with clear boundaries. You don't have to save everyone. You don't have to give everyone information. Be selective in that. Then we have the 5-2s, another double projection field, again, because the 5 and the 2 energy. You carry this natural talent and leadership energy. Others expect you to fix things even when you need and want space. So you might oscillate or swing between visibility and hermiting. And exhaustion for 5-2s often comes when you're trying to keep up the pace and over deliver and meet these unrealistic expectations. But when you honor your need for solitude, and again, those clear boundaries, that's when ease comes into your life. Then we have the 6-2s. These are the role model hermits. 6-2s, because of the 6 energy, have those 3 phases of life. You're here to embody wisdom naturally. You need that alone time as a 2-line to integrate your life experiences. But others often see your leadership before you're ready to claim it. But midlife is this period of this like turning point into deeper self-trust. And 6-2s often I've seen thrive when they let themselves be called forward rather than constantly pushing. And then last but not least, another less common profile is the 6-3, the role model experimenter. 6-3s live again in these phases. Early in life, it's this double 3 energy. So life teaches you through experience, and you're here to turn those lessons into embodied wisdom. And again, remember that 30 to 50, which corresponds to midlife, often brings this desire to live more intentionally. Again, you're integrating these lessons. And you may feel tired of the repeating patterns. So, this on the roof phase may be exactly what you need to detach from that bumping into things. And clarity for a 6-3 really comes when you stop judging your path and just trust the flow and the journey that your soul chose for this lifetime. As I mentioned, every profile has tension, and that's built in for a reason. It's really to get you out of your comfort zone and get you into who you really are and less of what other people are expecting out of you. And every profile has gifts. In the 9 Centers Mystery School, this is where we start to really apply these lessons to our life and practice it and experiment it. We're like living our design instead of just learning about it. Now, as I usually do, there are a few questions that I want you to contemplate on, or I invite you to contemplate on. So if you want to pause, grab a notebook, or just come back to this episode. Number one, where do you feel this tension or the friction because you may have been trying to show up differently than what actually is natural for you? That's a big question. So I'll repeat it again. Where do you feel the friction because you were trying to live differently than what actually feels natural for you? Number two, when you're going about your week this week, what's one moment where you can pause before reacting and notice what your first instinct is instead of defaulting to what you think you should do? Number three, where are you putting pressure on yourself to be more visible, be more prepared, more certain, or more consistent than what your profile actually supports? And lastly, what's one small permission you can give yourself this week based on your profile? All right, we're going to wrap it up here, but just like everything else in your human design chart, I want you to understand that profiles are not something to fix. There is nothing wrong with your profile. There is nothing wrong with the energies that your soul chose in this lifetime. You would have not chosen these lessons if you were not equipped to handle them. Profile lines are just another way to understand yourself and the people around you, and to be able to put into language what you already feel and know about yourself so that you can step into this deeper, more authentic way of being. If this episode felt good, I have a few ways that we can work together. First, rate this podcast wherever you listen to them. 5 stars would be awesome. Leave a comment or subscribe on YouTube and share it with someone who's been trying to understand themselves a little bit deeper too. Second way is grab your free energy snapshot. This is a foundational way that you can get an overview of your human design type to really start if you haven't already grabbed that. And lastly, if you want a deeper look at how your chart it really works in real time, again, that is what we do inside the 9 Centers Mystery School. This is my 6-month space where we work together in a community and we put the pieces together, not in a vacuum, but this is integration. And this is application of our design in real life. Well, that's it for this